afternoon, everyone. So we're just going to give a round of applause to these beautiful ladies, first of all, in front of us. Thank you so much for being on this panel session. So we're just going to go straight into it because we have a little less time. So we're talking about entrepreneurship. And, you know, I was looking, the definition for entrepreneurship is more about the organization allowing an employee to grow and thrive and be an entrepreneur in the career space, right? So I'm going to ask Bodam first a question. And the question is, so in terms of your personal story, right, in relation to your personal story, how can you define entrepreneurship? Because I saw on your LinkedIn, you know, you started as a commercial engineer, and then now you're head of head of portfolio Bond Connect, Pernod Ricard. So that journey, I want to know how you would define entrepreneurship based on your personal story.
Okay, thank you for that question, Arelua. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's afternoon. Hello, answer me now. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, there we go. All right, so how would I define entrepreneurship? In a single sentence, I would say it's taking that corporate organization as your own business. And what does this mean in practical terms? It means the way I build brands. I've been building brands now for, over a decade or so. And the way that you would spend money, you spend it as your own money. The way that you would show up, it's as if it's your own business. Not everybody may have a business outside of work, but for me, entrepreneurship is just that idea that that place you're working is yours. And the way you would look at it and how you want to see it grow is the same energy you will put into something that you built by yourself. So for me, that's what entrepreneurship is. And in my journey, I think that's it. Everywhere I've worked, this is my thing. What is the legacy I want to leave behind after I leave? What's the mark that I want to leave? How do I want to grow this brand or this business from A to B while I'm on there, so that when I leave, I can leave with my full chest that I've done something and I've left something behind.
Put your name on it. That's amazing. Just give it a round of applause for that. All right. So I just wanted to, tweak that a bit in asking you, Topsy. It's the bit where I saw that you started your journey at McKinsey, and then right now you're also at McKinsey. So from McKinsey to McKinsey, we'd like to know that entrepreneurial story. Like, how was it for you, and what do you think that's something that we can learn from that?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here for the first time at WIBI, so thank you, and thank you, FSDH. In terms of entrepreneurship, right, I think I'll just tag on to what she said, which I think she accurately described. Entrepreneurship is you running your career like your career is a business, all right? I read a book maybe about 10, 15 years ago when I first started out my career. And the book was called Brand You 50. It's a bit of an old book. If you can find it on Amazon, or if you can find it around, read it. Brand You 50. He also had another book called Project 50, and it was written by Tom Peters. And the concept of what he wrote really influenced me, whereby he spoke about you being your own brand. So whenever you show up for a company, it's like the company has hired a consultant. You are the consultant. You're an independent contractor. And then you embody the mindset that she shared, whereas you embody the mindset of, okay, what am I delivering here in the time that I'm here? What are the things that I want to do? What am I adding to my own portfolio? Because when I go to the next company, I'm taking that portfolio along with me, right? And I think that mindset is the mindset that brings ownership, because some people are not going to naturally be owners of what they don't own. They'll say, I beg, it's not my father's business. Do you understand? But when you see it as, listen, this is my own portfolio I'm building, it's not about a philosophical thing. It is truly you, and it's truly like your business, right? And I think for me, that's the role that entrepreneurship has played in my career journey. I've been at McKinsey twice. So I actually started my career out at IBM. I started out as an engineer, and then I went to a startup that failed. And then, I joined McKinsey. I said, okay, let me learn how business works and get a bit of exposure. And I did that for a bit. But while I was at McKinsey, I felt like I would really love an opportunity to execute, because oftentimes as consultants, you just stop short at the part of advice, and you don't get to get your hands fully dirty. And so a great opportunity came up, and I left to First Bank. I never thought I'd be back at McKinsey, because I just didn't think they would even want me back anyway. But I left, and then I did some things at First Bank, another great experience. And then I said, well, I think at heart, I'm actually a consultant. So I went back to McKinsey. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so thinking about what you just both said, which was the mindset of ownership while you're in your career journey, right? I would like you to just tell us, what was that moment for you? What was that thing that actually made you have that mindset? Because a lot of us, we're thinking, I'll have ownership when I have my business, right? And then I'll just work for this person for this time. Let me use it to do something, right? So what is that key mindset that you think, or what was that moment for you that actually changed your mind? Or maybe you had it forever, but can you just tell us how, you came about that mindset to be like, pushing entrepreneurship in your own journey?
So there's a quote that I like, and it says, "He who is faithful in little is faithful in much," right? And I think I've seen that practically play out. So I started off as a commercial engineer, as you said. I worked with Huawei. I knew very early on. So I have a first degree as well as a master's in electronics engineering and mobile and satellite communications. But I knew categorically that I did not want to practice. It was beautiful to study, and that was going to be the end of that. And I started working in Huawei, and I was like, okay, this is nice. And then I moved to a smaller company that was called Verity, I think at the time, and they were doing value-added services. So a very small organization, and the beauty about small organizations is you can do a lot more things than you can do in big organizations. So I was the this, and I was the that, and I was everything, all that. And I think the moment that it hits me that this thing, if you're faithful in little things, it opens doors for you, is when I was sitting and having a conversation with someone. It wasn't even a recruitment type of conversation, just a random conversation. And we're having that conversation, and I started speaking about this business and the things that we had accomplished and what I had done to bring that to bear. And the person was like, my goodness, do you understand what it is that you've achieved in just the first few years after I'd graduated? And it really hits me that it's not, and it's like what she was saying earlier, it's not about the business. Yes, you're growing a business, but it's really about my own portfolio and how I've grown my portfolio. And every step of the way, when I step away and when I go through and I step on, and I can tell story for days, but one last story I would share. I was in Diageo. I worked in Diageo for a few years. That was my first foray into FMCG life. So I was in Diageo for a few years, and I went in when they were building their ultra-premium portfolio. So I was invited onto the team. Never worked in the alcohol industry, had no clue what it was about, but I was like, okay, let's do this. It should be fun. And my induction was a call with a woman who was based in Amsterdam at the time. And it was a 2-hour call. She told me the vision and all of that. And my line manager in Nigeria at the time says, have you had the call? I said, yes. He said, so do you know what to do? And I'm looking at him like, He's like, go and do it. That singular experience as well shifted how it is that I showed up, because I realized I had to set a system for what would allow not just me, but this new business that was starting in Nigeria to succeed. And the thing of that entrepreneurial mindset is that it's not a business that's failing. It's my responsibility to make that brand double each year and to grow and to show up every day as if this thing is mine. So those little things and that moment opened many more doors along the way in my career. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, so I would like to ask Topsy about like 3 traits that you feel that is necessary, right, in that entrepreneurial journey. Something that you would think that, everyone here should definitely know about and hold on to.
First of all, I'd like to say that being an entrepreneur is not even an option anymore. So we're not having a conversation of, should you be or should you not be? You must be an entrepreneur in today's setup, right? So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that we need to think of entrepreneurship as almost like a paid internship. We go to school, we pay school to teach us and to learn, right? And you work in a company that is paying you to express yourself. I think if you can have that mindset that this company, wherever, this organization is my platform, there are opportunities for me to do things here, and I'm actually receiving a salary while doing it. I think I got that perspective early because I told you I was in a failed startup. So I know what it is to go out and sell and the market is not selling. You know what I mean? And, when you're in a startup, if you are not bringing money in, salaries are not being paid. I mean, we've probably heard ecosystem stories, salaries are not being paid. But you're in a large organization, every month on payday, salary is coming and all the rest. So it's actually a paid internship. And the question you should be asking yourself is, how can I leverage this platform? Number one, to build my portfolio of services, of experiences and other things. Number two, to build my network. I find that the network you get in an organization is a very powerful one. There are people that contact you when you're working in a bank, when you're working at a telco, or wherever, your consumer goods business. When you've left and your name is just your name, not backed by that brand, you will realize then the power of the network that organization has helped you build in terms of building relationships. So the second mindset would be to just leverage that platform to sort of develop relationships. And then the third thing would be really about resilience, because the truth is that we make it sound cool that, as an entrepreneur, you can do things in the organization. But that's not the reality in organizations. You come in with all the energy, with all the ginger, and then, one department says, no, that idea is going nowhere. Or someone says, no, we're not interested. Or you have a concept paper that has been written since and is hanging on one desk. So you have to have a sense of resilience. You have to say, okay, fine, maybe I have these 3 ideas. I've pushed this one so far and it's going nowhere. Can I make an adjustment? Who can I collaborate with? It teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you humility, because you will need to go and beg and make relationships with people just for the sake of what you're trying to push through, right? But all of those skill sets will pay you, whether in your next role or even create your next role for you, or in your own business. And the truth is, I've looked around. There are not a lot of us that are true entrepreneurs. Even Nigeria, we say we are very entrepreneurship because we have energy. No, we're actually, we're franchise type people. We like business, but just because we like business doesn't make you an entrepreneur. So there are very few of us that are entrepreneurs. So if we can learn this entrepreneurship mindset, it will pay us significantly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So I wanted to look at it from the management perspective, because I would say that both of you are in management in some kind of way, right? Which is, how do you think that women can be further pushed? Or what do you think that management has to do right now to push women, the entrepreneurial journey for women, right? I know that some people, one of the speakers that we had today was talking about how women need to, not every time conference, sometimes let's come together and literally strategically push women into those spaces, right? So I'm asking that, what do you think is necessary for management to do to ensure that women are able to move, don't drop off in the middle management when they have kids and all those type of things, right? To ensure that the entrepreneurial journey is a bit easier for women. So I'm asking you, Bodam.
Okay, so I would say the first thing would probably be policy. And I know it's easier said than done, right? But policy that supports the growth of women, policy around maternity leave, and not just maternity leave, because organizations can say, oh, I give 6 months leave, I give 4 months leave, but it's how you help the women to integrate back into the workforce when they come off maternity leave. Is there a buddy system? What's that soft landing you give to encourage women that taking time off to have a child is not going to come back to bite them, just after, and all of that. So that's the first thing, the type of policy that's created. I know some organizations are now having Vision 2030, where they want 50% of leadership to be female, or whatever number to be female. Those type of things will influence how it is you choose to hire and how it is you choose to train. That's the first thing. The second thing I think would lie with managers, whether you are middle management, senior management, and that is how you create space within your teams to allow women to express themselves. And this can be in little things. Sometimes, and I'm saying a very generic statement, it doesn't apply to everyone, but sometimes when you're around the table, across my, if I use my journey, for a large part of my journey, I was one of very few women around the table. Not many people were in my industry. And there's a tendency, because sometimes the men's voices project louder, there's a tendency to be a bit silent when you're around the table, isn't it? There's a tendency to allow the extroverts, I'm not particularly an extrovert, there's a tendency to allow the extroverts to dominate the conversation. And then all the ideas you have that are real, because you might hear someone say, I was thinking that too, but I didn't say it. So if you're a leader in whatever capacity, middle, senior, to deliberately create the space around those tables for women to speak, and sometimes that might mean calling out someone. So to say, what do you think about this? And can I get your perspective? Oh, I don't have anything to say. Okay, think about it for a few minutes and I'm going to come back to you. Deliberately going that way. The third thing I would say for managers again, and I know we talk about this a lot, we've probably flogged it to death, and that's the idea of mentors and sponsors, and this is critical. When we rise up, not to close the door behind us, but to have those intimate conversations with women, to just pick one or two people and say, what's your plan for your life? And how can I support you? Whether it's with advice, and it might just be giving a book, and she recommended the book that I'm going to read now, but she recommended a book just a few minutes ago. And it might just be that, to say, there's a book I've seen here, there's a YouTube video I think might help you here, or when you present, have you noticed you have a tendency to do ABC? Maybe you can try doing it this other way. Those are little deliberate things that as managers we can do in practical ways to help women not be afraid of taking ownership. Final thing I'll say is not to penalize others for making mistakes. Entrepreneurship journey, like entrepreneurship, you will make mistakes. You will make an investment that, hey, doesn't work. You would put a bet behind, an idea you think is going to be phenomenal, and it would just fail on arrival. It's what happens. And I think people are safe to express themselves when they know that they will not be penalized for making mistakes. Of course, we would, be wise and we'll put all the research behind it and all of that. But creating that open space for people to be like, let's try this, and then go behind it, I think would help to raise that journey. Yeah.
How are you feeling that? Exactly. So if you're going to be a manager yourself, right, these are the things that we need to hold on to. Okay, so I would just ask now, Topsy, what would be like so I'm going into your story here. I want us to get a bit personal, right? Maybe get a few tears, right? What would be a moment for you? And I want to say maybe from a perspective of a woman, right? That was very challenging in your entrepreneurial journey, and you feel like it will help someone here to maybe even be more ambitious and grow and help them in their journey. Okay, so there are a lot. Okay.
Very difficult to pick one moment, but maybe just a little bit of my story. So I started off at IBM, I worked at McKinsey, and then I joined First Bank. I joined First Bank without a banking background, and we were driving transformation and change. And I joined First Bank at a pretty young age in a very senior role. I was 28, and I was brought in as a general manager to drive transformation. On that basis alone, you know that I was not well received at First Bank, and no one really wanted me to sort of be around, right? And within that context, there's all this change that we need to drive. And I think what I learned was, there are many things that you want to do because you genuinely feel like this is in the best interest of the bank. And you put some of those ideas forward. You do, you're coming from a consulting background, you do all the analysis, you do your case and all the rest. And, it just seems like, listen, are we really ready to change or not, right? Some of the feedback starts getting personal and all of that. But what I found out is one of the biggest lessons I learned. I feel like I developed as a human being at First Bank. I got a lot of technical knowledge and skills at McKinsey, but I developed as a person at First Bank.
The way you, for example, and this is very practical, it may mean that the way you choose to dress in certain organizations may project a version of you that's not a 22 or 25-year-old version of yourself if you're dealing with people in their 50s and in their 60s. It may mean that the way you choose to speak or the way you choose, or the type of jewelry you choose to wear. And again, it's just being situationally aware. It will not be that way forever. But I think where sometimes we're like, oh, they should accept me as me. No, does not really quite work, right? So be situationally aware and then choose to project yourself a few years ahead is what I'd say.
All right, there's a follow-up question, but I want her to answer that as well.
Bodam always says what I align with, right? I want to double down on what you said about how you show up, right? You know, I mentioned I was 28 in a financial services industry in the oldest bank in Nigeria. There was a certain way I had to dress. I mean, it didn't change that I was 28. You know what I mean? But at least look responsible. At times, I wear glasses. I don't wear them all the time. I actually really do need glasses for distance. But there are some meetings I'll always go in with my glasses because I just felt like it gave me a little bit more seriousness and all the rest, right? But on this issue of ageism is something I'm extremely passionate about. And I think it's both ways. I think there's a need for mutual honor from the young and from the old because there's a lot of value that can be shared across. I think from the young person is being, even as you show up, like she said, properly, right? You show up with wisdom. There's a way you talk to people. You can't just say that because you have a perspective. There's a way you talk that makes what you're saying received, or people shut you out and shut you down. So I think that's from the angle of the young person. But from the older people, I think there's also something about mutual honor. In Nigeria, it's like we only believe that honor is one way, young to old. And it's not so. There's an honor that's due to a young person. And there's a way you even teach a young person honor by how you honor them, that they say, let me also respond in kind. And I find that when you honor young people, they open up their own treasures in you because there are things they see, there are things they know, there are ideas they have that, you just don't have, right? And for me, that's one of my big passions for organizations because I believe competitive organizations are the ones that can create these safe spaces for young people that enable them to share.
All right, so as quickly as possible, maybe in 1 minute each, a follow-up question. Someone says, how did you do it at 28? And they're asking you, they say two of you were female leaders at very young ages, and how exactly did you do it?
Wow, how did I do that? It would sound like cliche. I'm telling you, if you ask me this question from here, I'll tell you that I'm blessed and highly favored, which, by the way, I am. It's not an argument, right? But I wouldn't have been able to tell you specific things, right? I can't tell you specific I did this. I was looking for a job in First Bank. I wasn't actually. I was at McKinsey, and I thought life was good. And this is why I shared about the book I mentioned earlier. Over the last 3 years, I realized through reflection, like, what were those things that were at play in my life that were creating opportunities for me that I wasn't aware of. And that's what I documented. But specifically, how did I get that job at First Bank? It was through a relationship, which is one of the things I share, quality relationships. I didn't get the job. A good friend of mine got a job as the head of strategy at First Bank. And I said, this is great. I think you should take the job. I'll be your consultant. We'll all be happy. And in fact, he was single at the time. They were going to give him 2 official cars. I said, that's great. You just give me 1. This is a good arrangement, And then he said, but know that, the MD of First Bank is also looking for someone to drive transformation. And I said, that I should, he wants to talk to me. I said, no, I'm actually focused for the first time in my career at McKinsey. We're opening up a local office and all the rest. Anyway, long story short, I actually go and see the new MD, the former CBN governor, Emir of Kano. I actually go and see him, just say thank you for the opportunity, for considering me, but I'm very focused. But after speaking to him for like 5 minutes, my friend that got the job has not accepted the job. Well, me, I was ready to go. I was ready to go because I listened to a man that had clarity of vision, that had boldness. You don't know if he will succeed, but you can say that you're dealing with a man that is not normal, that is bold enough to try different things. And I said, no, I must be part of this, right? So that's the backstory. Thank you.
I would say that, and I think we have similar journeys in a sense, because honestly, there are some things that you can't script. I didn't script. But I would say what I did, I started working when I got my first job when I was 21, and gradually moved really quickly. A few things I think that helped me practically were understanding my values and my value system. I work in a very interesting industry, and I'm going to leave it at that, okay? So understanding my value system, understanding the lines that I just wouldn't cross as a person, especially as a woman, around that table, understanding how I am seen and how I am perceived, right? Learning emotional intelligence and just the emotional IQ piece very early on, understanding the psychology of power and little things. So I think what has helped me the most is not just technical knowledge, because anybody can have technical knowledge. What has helped me the most are all the seemingly soft skills that a lot of us don't pay attention to in pursuit of technical knowledge. So you will know the technical stuff. You have to. That's the basic. But everything else, do you know how to have a conversation with people? What's your manner of approach? How do people, I'm very intentional, or I became very intentional very early on about how I want people to feel after they leave me. So when they have a one-on-one conversation with me, I'm thinking, how do I want this person to feel when they walk away from me? And that's even if I have to have difficult conversations, or if I have to correct people. So those soft things, yes, added with all the other things, the grace, everything that opened doors I would never have imagined, but being excellent at my job. And I say this without equivocation, being excellent. Too often as women, and because we're women, I'm going to say this today. Outside, I'll defend us, but today, because we're sisters, I will say this. Too often we make excuses for ourselves. Oh, it's that time of the month, so I'm a little bit like this, but we hear it all the time. Or you know what, I have to do, even if you're married and you have to take your child for immunization, men take personal days all the time. You don't have to come and be like, you know what, I'm taking my child for immunization. They don't need to know. All you have to say is, listen, I need a personal day. It's your entitlement, that's it. Right? So the way you project yourself in seemingly little things like that are very important. And I think that's some of the things that helped me in my journey.
I'm going to cheat a little because we are way beyond time, but the online community is buzzing with questions for you. I think this is going to be the last question. And this is, of course, to... okay, this one says, Mrs. Tokwe, your book talks about honor. How will I as an entrepreneur apply this? I struggle with this.
As an entrepreneur or intrapreneur?
Entrepreneur.
I think one way that honor comes about as an entrepreneur is, again, the whole concept of honor is that honor all people. What does honor all people mean? It means that you perceive everyone as carrying value. Just because they are a human being and they are alive, they carry value. So it's not about their status. It's not about how much they bought from you. It's not about the potential business they can bring, and so on and so forth. So I think if you have that mindset as an entrepreneur, in terms of your staff, how you engage them, how you think about them, it will come into play. In terms of your customer service, especially, we all know how it's been. Like, you go into some institutions, they first check, whether was the balance in your account, and you get special treatment, and then you are just like regular treatment, right? But then it comes into play in terms of things like that. And practically, how can you apply? Because people say, yeah, honor, but how do I practically apply honor? I think honor is number one, language. There's a language of honor, being able to say thank you, please, I'm sorry. That is a language of honor. Second is gratitude. Honor expresses itself through gratitude. It doesn't matter that you are paying for a service or that you pay an employee. You can tell them thank you when they offer service. Things like that.
Amazing. Just to add to that, I'm someone who, a large part of my work is from social media. And I will say that some of my highest paying clients are people that didn't have up to 100 people that were following them on Instagram. So don't look down on anybody. Don't think, because they have 100,000, 200 or 500,000 followers. Everybody should be treated as important. Can we please applaud this panel? We'd like you all to please stand for a group photo. Online community, unfortunately, we cannot take any more questions. We are so sorry. We're way behind schedule. But thank you so much. We honor you. Can we tell them we honor you? Great panel session.